Under crooked Joe Biden, the U.S. government has spent nearly $1 billion to house illegal aliens and foreign migrants in expensive luxury hotels, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer, and they want to spend billions and billions more. In many states, we're running out of hotel space because the rooms are all booked up with illegal aliens living in a very large way on the American taxpayer's dime. Meanwhile, we have 33,000 veterans in this country who are homeless and living very poorly, I might add, and it's a shame. They're living in filth and squalor on our streets. Nobody is doing a thing for them. We helped them a lot during my 4 years, and it's all been dropped. Everything we did for our veterans has been dropped. It's a disgrace. Joe Biden puts illegal aliens before homeless veterans, and we cannot let this happen any longer. The American veteran is one of our greats. These are great, great people. We have to take care of them. When I am reelected, this national scandal will end. On day one, I will sign an executive order to cut off Joe Biden's massive spigot of funding for shelter and transport of illegal aliens and redirect a portion of those savings, a very large portion, I might add, to provide shelter and treatment for homeless American veterans. I will make it a personal mission to totally eradicate veterans' homelessness in America by the end of next term. You'll see a big difference, just like you did at the VA, just like you did with, frankly, everything we touched. The border was the best border we've ever had. We were energy independent. We were soon going to be energy dominant. Our country was doing great. We had no inflation. We had the best economy in history. We're going to take care of our veterans. If you have served this nation in uniform, the Trump administration will never betray you as Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats have done. They have truly betrayed you. Anybody voting for a Democrat is very foolish, very, very foolish. We certainly will not be putting illegal alien lawbreakers up in ultimate luxury while American veterans lay shivering on the sidewalks below. Unlike Biden, our loyalty will not be to illegal aliens who have violated our borders and come into our country illegally. They've trampled our sovereignty. It will be to the brave men and women who enlisted their lives to defend our borders and to protect our sovereignty. Thank you very much. We're going to take care of our veterans. Crooked Joe Biden is running a nonstop conveyor belt importing illegal aliens from all over the world into our country, and the Biden Department of Homeland Security is abusing its so-called parole authority to give them more governmental benefits than many law-abiding citizens, including our vets. Our vets are being taken advantage of. Our citizens are being taken advantage of. It's very unfair, and it's not going to stand. Under this horrendous abuse of power, millions of illegals will be eligible for billions and billions of dollars in welfare benefits, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer. So not only is Crooked Joe surrendering your borders and your sovereignty, he is stealing your hard-earned money to redistribute it to people who have no business being in our country. They should be in their country. This is not sustainable by anybody, certainly not sustainable by us. The United States is trillions of dollars in debt, yet the radical left Democrats are illegally dispensing public benefits to illegals while they try to massively raise your taxes. The radical left communists hate you, and they hate our middle class. Under Biden's scheme, the benefits that will go to illegal aliens include food stamps, free health care, welfare checks, and a host of other programs, the likes of which you would not even believe. In addition, Biden is also giving illegal aliens work permits to take jobs away from American citizens. And then if they have children, not only do the children get automatic citizenship, but they unlock a trove of additional government benefits flowing to illegal immigrant households. In the meantime, our vets suffer and our citizens suffer. On day one of my new administration, we will shut down this travesty and defend the wealth of hardworking middle-class families. I will stop the outrageous abuse of parole authority. I will reinstate my action making illegals ineligible for public housing. We will terminate all work permits for illegal aliens, and I will demand that Congress send me a bill blocking any future president from abusing his power to distribute welfare benefits in this manner. It's all being paid for by the American taxpayer. Like automatic citizenship for children of illegal aliens, welfare is a gigantic magnet drawing people from all over the world. They want to come to the United States. They want to feast off the sweat and savings of the American taxpayer. It's not fair. It's not just. We're not going to let it happen. I will end it all immediately. Thank you. In recent weeks, Americans have been horrified to see students and faculty at Harvard and other once-respected universities expressing support for the savages and jihadists who attacked Israel. We spend more money on higher education than any other country, and yet they're turning our students into communists and terrorists and sympathizers of many, many different dimensions. We can't let this happen. It's time to offer something dramatically different. Under the plan I'm announcing today, we will take the billions and billions of dollars that we will collect by taxing, fining, and suing excessively large private university endowments, and we will then use that money to endow a new institution called the American Academy. Its mission will be to make a truly world-class education available to every American, free of charge, and do it without adding a single dime to the federal debt. This institution will gather an entire universe of the highest quality educational content covering the full spectrum of human knowledge and skills, and make that material available to every American citizen online for free. Whether you want lectures or ancient histories or an introduction to financial accounting or training in a skilled trade, the goal will be to deliver it and get it done properly. Using study groups, mentors, industry partnerships, and the latest breakthrough in computing, this will be a truly top-tier education option for the people. It will be strictly non-political, and there will be no wokeness or jihadism allowed. None of that's going to be allowed. Most importantly, the American Academy will compete directly with the existing and very costly four-year university system by granting students degree credentials that the U.S. government and all federal contractors will henceforth recognize. The Academy will award the full and complete equivalent of a bachelor's degree. In addition, to help the 40 million Americans who have some college education but no degree, the American Academy will grant credit for past coursework at legacy institutions and give you the chance to complete your education at the American Academy for free and much more quickly than is now possible or available. This will be a revolution in higher education and will provide life-changing opportunities for tens of millions of our citizens. Enjoy it, learn from it, and thank you. Crooked Joe Biden just agreed to pay a $6 billion ransom to the Iranian dictatorship in exchange for hostages. This is yet another Biden surrender and a further blistering humiliation of the United States of America to the world stage. But even worse, this decision will be extremely deadly. Biden is giving $6 billion to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Just as when Obama sent the Iranian regime pallets of cash for hostages in the dark of night, remember? Plane loads of cash. Biden's ransom payment will be immediately used to stoke violence, bloodshed, and mayhem throughout the Middle East and all around the world, costing countless innocent lives. It's also guaranteed that the fanatical Iranian regime will use this money to advance their nuclear weapons program, putting Israel, the United States, and the entire world in very grave peril. They are reportedly just weeks away from a nuclear bomb, something which would have never happened under the Trump administration. Tragically, Biden's ransom payments also make it dramatically more likely that even more Americans will be held captive in the future, because Biden has shown that he will pay gargantuan sums of money, meaning the kidnappers turn a massive profit. They're making money hand over fist. In other words, Biden has put a bounty on the head of every American citizen abroad. Under my leadership, we brought home more than 50 hostages from all over the world, and we never paid ransom money to do it, not at all. We did it with diplomacy, and we did it through strength, and we will do it again when we are reelected as President of the United States. Our country is failing. We are a failing nation. We will turn it around, and we will make America great again. Thank you.
In recent weeks, Joe Biden has been pushing his disastrous economic agenda called Bidenomics. But what is Bidenomics? Well, here's a preview.
Let's be clear about what Bidenomics really is. I mean, the economic plans out of this administration have been very clear. Spending, regulation, and higher taxes. That's what Bidenomics is.
And thanks to Joe Biden's war on American energy, in 2022, Americans paid the highest gas prices ever, over $5 a gallon. In fact, Joe Biden has set a lot of records, like 40-year record high inflation, like 26 months of collapsing real wages, the longest streak on record. And thanks to Bidenomics, hardworking Americans now owe nearly $1 trillion in credit card debt, an all-time record high.
The cost of housing, shelter up 5.5% in 1 year. Electricity up 13.5%. Natural gas up almost 40%. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner is more expensive. Food up 10.5%.
Bidenomics means 1/3 of Gen Z and millennials have absolutely zero savings. Nothing. But it wasn't always like this. In fact, Joe Biden inherited a booming, robust economy from President Donald J. Trump.
Remember, Mr. Biden inherited a 6.5% growth rate with roughly 1.5% inflation from his predecessor, Donald Trump. Essentially, Biden's big government socialism has turned a booming economy into a bust.
Under President Trump, wages were up, unemployment hit historic lows, and on his last day in office, gasoline was only $2.39 a gallon. President Trump created 7 million new jobs, triple the projections, leading to the lowest unemployment rate in nearly 50 years. The Trump economy lifted 7 million people off of food stamps and achieved a record-high stock market and record 401ks. Under President Trump, unemployment rates for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, women, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and those without a high school diploma all reached record lows.
And the other candidates can only claim they know how to run a national economy. No one knows if they do or not. Trump is a proven, well, look who I'm telling, Trump is a proven winner on the economy.
It's an invasion of America. Streets flooded with poison, killing millions. Enemies and tyrants on opposite sides of the globe laugh at us. Wars threaten us. The threat of nuclear annihilation, once forgotten, is now real again. America's weakness has become their strength. The global elitists who send your kids to war, who tell you a woman is a man and a man is a woman, who teach your children their country, their faith, their beliefs are a lie. They have corrupted every facet of American government, weaponized it against you. While they watch our cities burn and violent crime skyrocket, you and your families pay the price. Out of control inflation, an economy wrecked, a nation in decline. This is Joe Biden's America. Failing, weak. But one man, one movement can change all that for us. Put America, the middle class, first. And put the globalists, the elitist, and the corrupt in their place. Bring back pride and the American dream. To let the world know, don't mess with us. One man focused on the true owners of this great land. One movement focused on the true priorities. Make America great for us again.
How far will the most corrupt president in history go to keep Republicans from winning back the White House? Meet the cast of unscrupulous accomplices he's assembled to get Trump. Alvin Bragg, the radical liberal New York prosecutor who refuses to prosecute violent criminals. Jack Smith, who's made a career persecuting innocent Republican officials. Letitia James, the socialist who ran on the promise, "I'll go after Trump." And Biden's newest lackey, Atlanta DA, Fani Willis. So incompetent, on her watch, violent crimes have exploded. So tainted, Willis was thrown off one case for trying to prosecute a political opponent. So corrupt, Willis got caught hiding a relationship with a gang member she was prosecuting. So dishonest, Willis was accused of creating a fake subpoena. Welcome to the Fraud Squad.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Here's a question for you. Just how far are the radical left and inside the Beltway bandits willing to go to stop him? We all know they hate him for winning the fight to protect life, for exposing their deep state, for draining their precious swamp. And they already know he'll crush Biden. So like a pack of rabid wolves, they attack. So let's impeach him. Let's get tainted radical left prosecutors to charge him. Let's conspire with Hillary and the FBI with fake stories about him. All to distract from Biden's incompetence, weakness, and money-grabbing corruption. But here's the thing, he'll never blink. That's called having the courage of your convictions. And it's why he's our president.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Before we get started, it's Veterans Day, and I want to give a sincere thanks to all the veterans out there. But I always tell everybody, you want to thank a veteran, don't tell them. Just be someone worth dying for. But you know, last night I was talking about getting the rhinos on board with this new style Republican MAGA party that I consider myself a part of. And I was scrolling through my timeline, and it was mostly tons of posts and videos about veteran stuff in anticipation of today. You know, storming the beaches of Normandy, Vietnam, even my era when I was in Iraq. Now, tons of remembrance posts for those who gave their lives for this country. It really kind of struck a chord with me that how petty this inter-party bickering really is. Two sides of the same party are arguing, squibbling about virtually nothing, while the other side, the Democratic Party, is fast-tracking this thing right into world chaos. Both rhinos and the New Style Republicans campaign on the same issues. It's the same thing. Limited government, fiscal responsibility, all that good stuff. But the only difference is that the people that align with the Trump-style Republicans are far more likely to actually govern the way they campaign. It's the rhinos that run on these principles, but when they get elected, they pal around with Democrats and check their conservative principles at the door. It's so frustrating. We're not some radical fringe, us MAGA folks. You want to know how I know? Because Trump, our guy, is winning by like 50 points over anyone else right now. We're the majority. And that is a large part because of you, old school rhinos, you noodle rhinos who got tired of working, we got tired of working our tails off for you, donating our hard-earned money so you can go to D.C. with your people and glad hand to some giant uniparty. That's how Trump came about. We're tired of screaming, help us, telling you what we, the people who elected you, what we want, only to be met with like lectures and scorns and all these condescending remarks. How many of you at home, folks, seriously, sick and tired of some congressman or a senator or any other bureaucrat? They promise you a bunch of stuff, they don't deliver, and when they can't deliver, they try to explain to you how, oh, you don't understand the way things work. I think they get the job not done because they don't understand how things work. These people work for us. I've said it before. And I think any politician or any government official that says anything on the campaign trail, that should be considered under oath. Violations of that, once in office, probably should be met with some sort of perjury or contempt charges. That's just me. That whole accountability will never get passed into law. This new Republican Party just wants Republicans to actually be Republicans. Mitt Romney. And the now minority of our party resists that. I don't understand why. And it took me some time to figure this out, but you know why they're being such petulant children right now as Trump surges in the polls? Because they're not in charge anymore. That's all. They're so flabbergasted that they can't go to their cocktail parties and tout their titles and control. They're willing to throw the whole thing out the window and give all the power to the Democrats. Meanwhile, we're like struggling to pay our mortgages and put gas in our cars and food in our children's mouths because your feelings are hurt, rhinos, because you're not in charge of the party anymore. Because Trump gives you the sads. Grow up. You think that's why thousands of people died on the beaches in Normandy so you could cry at some donor party? Yeah, I'm talking to every Republican that gave the middle finger to Trump in the last election. I'm talking to you. Because American service members are getting rocketed at our bases overseas because you Lincoln Project acolytes decided that mean tweets were worse than Iran getting a nuclear weapon. These folks are a cancer. Vivek Ramaswamy last night was right. People all over the world are trying to kill us, and some GOP relics are worried about being offended? Better wake up. Because their temper tantrums got Joe Biden elected. It stopped the red wave in the last midterms and lost the state house in Virginia and a lot of other races, too. MAGA Republicans are different from you rhinos. You know what the difference is? Most of us didn't like Mitt Romney, but we got in line and we voted for him anyway. We even helped out on the campaigns because we cared more about Republican policies than our own ego. Rhinos, when their guy wasn't the candidate, they didn't vote. Or worse, some voted Democrat. And that's why we now have 30% inflation since Biden took office. Thanks to you, rhinos. You campaigned against the guy who gave us the best economy in my lifetime. And no, don't lecture me on decorum or how you didn't think he was presidential. He got the job done, didn't he? And yet you loathe him because you can't get over the fact that A, you said he couldn't do it and you were wrong, and B, because you don't have any influence with him. That's what this is about. And because of that pettiness, you stand in the way of our military might, our manufacturing and economic superiority. You rhinos gave us the current house plant that we have for a president right now, and that's destroying everything he touches. Can't even put on a sweater. You stand for nothing. You have no plan. You all criticize Matt Gaetz for not having a plan. His plan was to get a Republican speaker who was actually a Republican, and it worked. What's your plan in 2024? You're going to continue to campaign against Trump. Let's say by some random long shot in the dark, you do get rid of him. What's your plan to get a bunch of people like me on board who are going to be really mad about it? Seriously, I want to know. What are you going to do that's so star-spangled awesome that I should abandon the one guy who I thought did a great job and bend a knee to some guy that you own? I'm not going to hold my breath over that because I'm not going to get an answer. But because one thing I've come to know about these bums is that it's never about the American people. Nope. They think they're better than us. It's about power. And William Wallace summed it up perfectly in Braveheart.
You think the people of this country exist to provide you with position. I think your position exists to provide those people with freedom.
Yep, he's right. Look, the enemy's at the gate, folks. And we're squabbling over BS. We're not going back to the old guard Republican Party. You're never getting control again. That ship has sailed. And if you don't get over yourselves, the horrors of the world are coming here. And this partisan bickering is going to be the least of our worries. The path Democrats are taking us down ends America as we know it. Kids in our most prestigious institutions hate the very country that has given them endless opportunity. This inter-party bickering gives us governors that mandate you inject yourself with something you might not even want. It gives us massive deficits and losses of freedoms, and for what? A title so you can put it in your email signature? You don't even have to help, dude. Just vote. Do what I did for all the crappy candidates that you put up. Just shut up and vote for the guy at the top of the ticket of the party that you claim to be a part of. The old guard Republican Party is gone and dead. And that lingering 20% needs to decide, not whether they like Trump or not, but whether they like America or not.
New polling spells trouble for the Democrats. Biden now trailing Trump in 5 out of the 6 battleground states. But Biden says it's all cherry picking when pressed by our own Peter Doocy. Listen.
Why do you think it is that you're trailing Trump in all these swing state polls?
Because you don't read the polls out. There are 10 polls. 8 of them I'm beating them in those states. 8 of them. You guys only do 2. CNN and New York Times. Check it out. Check it out. We'll get your copy.
Brenna Bird is the Iowa Attorney General who endorsed President Trump, and she joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Why did you endorse him?
Well, President Trump is the one who will fire Joe Biden and win our country back. We were all a lot better off when he was president. Strong economy, strong country, our border was secure. He fought for farmers. We need President Trump back to make America great again.
Do you believe these polls that he's winning in 5 out of the 6 swing states?
I do. I think that President Trump will win. He's strong. He's doing very well in my home state of Iowa. And I think people recognize that Biden's leadership has been an absolute failure, and they remember what it was like under President Trump, and they want him back.
What's the relationship like now with you and Kim Reynolds? She's your governor, and she just endorsed Ron DeSantis.
Well, I have to say this. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds is the best governor in the country. She is just awesome and has led on important issues like tax reform and life and school choice. She has done a great job. And as Iowans, we all support different people in the caucuses, but we come together and support the nominee. And I think that's going to be President Donald Trump.
Do you think that'll hurt her down the road? Because Trump is, I mean, he's leading in the polls. His approval rating is higher than all 5 of those candidates we saw on the debate stage. So how do you think that's going to affect her politically down the road? Because he endorsed her.
Well, I think that Kim Reynolds is a great governor. I think at the end of the day, after all the caucuses and primaries are done, we're going to have President Trump as our nominee, and I think he's going to defeat Joe Biden. I think he's going to be a great president, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Donald Trump said President Biden is not up for the job when you're looking at what's happening in Israel and all around the world, really. He said he can't even walk up the stairs. He can't put 2 sentences together. What do you think will happen in the election?
Well, I have to say, as a mom and a prosecutor, what's going on with the Biden administration just makes me sick. Terrorism in Israel, the southern border out of control. Biden is an absolute failure. His policies have hurt farmers, families. Everybody who works is worse off under Biden's failed leadership. And we need a president who will make America great again, who will lead America back to the greatness that we used to have and that we can have again. And that's President Trump.
Brenna, what do you say about what happened on Tuesday? We just had these elections. You see the polls, President Trump's up. You see the state of our country. You see the state of our world. We need a stronger leader. So it makes Republicans feel very optimistic about the next election, the presidential election. But then you see what happened on Tuesday. How do you explain that? What do Republicans need to do differently?
Well, I think the key thing about winning elections is to campaign on the issues and to make sure that people get out and vote, that nobody takes it for granted that there's going to be some kind of red wave, that each American understands that their vote matters and that they need to go to the polls and get their friends and family to the polls, because we can't take 4 more years of a failed Biden administration.
One more question. Did you hear from Donald Trump after you endorsed him?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we campaigned in Iowa together, and I'm looking forward to campaigning together some more. He's very popular in our state, bringing out a lot of new voters, and I think that is part of the secret to his success, because people see that they're going to be better off under President Trump with the economy, with the security, and with a secure border.
Brenna, thank you so much for coming on with us, waking up this early.
Yeah, thank you.
And Art Laffer, former Reagan economist, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, author of Taxes Have Consequences. And if that weren't enough, we have Kevin Hassett, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under the Trump administration and author of The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. Kevin Hassett, Harvard, what, did I get this right? Harvard, Princeton, Chicago, the Treasury, hang on a second, said the Trump tax cuts worked and worked well. What do you make of that? I'm almost in shock.
Well, honestly, I know those guys. They're professional tax economists, and they go where the data leads, which is something that's kind of a rare treat. It's not very often, though, that people are willing to even research things that support, Trump policies, and I commend them for their courage. The one thing I got to say, though, is that there's something in the paper. One thing I disagree with. They actually said that the White House estimate, they didn't cite the estimate per se, was exactly correct on how much investment would go up because of the corporate tax cut. But they say that it had no effect on revenue. And I really, really don't think that's correct, because you remember I estimated the Laffer curve before we did the tax cuts, and since we were 35%, that the revenue is going to go up. Well, revenue went from about $300 billion corporate revenue to north of $400 billion since the tax cuts, and so revenue's gone up. I don't know how they say that revenue is flat. It's just inconsistent with the data.
Arthur, that's your cue. Arthur Laffer of the Laffer curve. That's your cue. Tax rates down, revenue up.
Yeah, and even in the first 2 years of it, Larry, revenues were higher, substantially higher than they were 2 years prior, and much higher than they had been. The increase had been the prior 2 years. So revenues were up even right in the first 2 years. Total revenues now from the government. That was there. And Kevin's totally right. The thing that amazed me, Larry, on this whole thing is Kevin has always made a point of how real wages would be rising. And he had this extreme view. I mean, and there it came true. I mean, Kevin, you deserve, a laurel around your head or whatever it is for predicting those wages. They just went bang way up. And then the poverty levels and all the minority groups and everything went to the lowest levels ever. Larry, it was great. Let me just say that I believe up until the pandemic that President Trump, on economics now, I'm just talking economics, was the single best president we've had in probably 100 years on good economics. He was better than Reagan in the short term. He's better than Kennedy. He just did the greatest job on economics I've seen. And then once the pandemic hit, all hell broke loose. But he was just phenomenal, and you guys did a great job in guiding him.
Actually, it's interesting on the pandemic. Tyler Goodspeed wrote this in his brief memo. The whole year, 2020, when the economy collapsed, but we talked about the V-shaped recovery, actually it was only down 1.1% for the entire year, a very modest decline considering it was a once-in-100-year catastrophe. And Kevin, you were not only right that the brunt of the benefits from these corporate tax cuts did, in fact, fall on the wage earners. The wage earners benefited the most, not the rich, not even consumer price. It was wage earners. You were right. It was a brilliant insight. You were out there for a while, but you got a lot of help, and you were correct. But also, Kevin, there was no inflation. I just want to make that point. You cut taxes, wage earners benefited, revenues went up, and inflation, you look at the inflation during that whole period, 2017, 2019, I throw in 2020, I don't care. I think the inflation rate was under 2%. Kevin Hassett.
Right, because when supply goes up, then prices go down. Right. I want to talk about the COVID thing, Larry, because it's something that you deserve a lot of credit for, and it also explains inflation. And I'll do it real quick. But you said when we first started talking about what are we going to do about these lockdowns, which we weren't really in favor of, that you said, well, we don't really know what's going to happen, so we got to do a little bit at a time. And in the end, that year, we had 5 stimulus bills that you and I estimated very carefully to fill the hole that was being dug by Tony Fauci. And so at the end of the year, even though they had a 32% drop in GDP was about flat for the year. That was by your design. Wow. And then what happened is Biden came in and he had this massive stimulus that we didn't need, and that's where inflation came from. But the fact that you led the team that exactly filled the hole, right? So it was only down 1% after the biggest drop since the Great Depression is really a remarkable accomplishment.
You're way too kind, but you and Tyler Goodspeed and we worked together. We had to replace lost income, and we knew it was a temporary loss and it would get filled in, and that's what we did, and it expired. We had it expiring. What Biden did in 21 was unpardonable because we didn't need it. There was a boom. But, Art, Biden has never told the truth about that. He always says he inherited a, quote, reeling economy, end quote, and he says that inflation started on high inflation under Trump. The growth rate he was handed in the first quarter of 21 was 6.5% at an annual rate, and the inflation rate was about 1.5% on the CPI. Biden has never acknowledged it. He's never acknowledged that, just like it took him 2 years to acknowledge how good the vaccines were to get us out of that hole.
Yeah, that's very true. And in fact, when you look at GDP growth or something, we've never caught back up to the growth path that Trump had before. It's still well below that growth path. In employment and GDP and all of these measures, he's never caught back up. And he always touts this Bidenomics, Larry. But there is no Bidenomics that's any good. You've got the inflation, and Kevin's completely correct. When you have a bumper crop in apples, the price of apples goes down, not goes up, and that's exactly what happened under Trump. You got this huge expansion, and the inflation stayed low. Then when Biden came in, you had all these transfer payments, which increases demand and also shrinks supply. And you see the price level having risen, I don't know, what is it, almost 20% since he's taken office?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just
inflation.
ridiculous. And
Inflation.
by the way, that should be also in the stock market number.
Inflation has come down.
When you
but
talk
prices
about the
have
stock
gone
market,
up.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean.
And they keep going up every period.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. All right, let's talk about the Fed quickly. We had Michigan survey today of consumer sentiment. Confidence is falling. Inflation fears are rising. Here we got a lovely clip of Jay Powell, who did something, by the way, that I liked a lot. Here's Jay Powell yesterday. Just take a listen to this clip.
Thank you. Just close the door. Where was I? Inflation was coming down. The labor market remains tight. U.S. inflation has come down over the past year, but remains well above our 2% target. My colleagues and I are, of course, gratified by this progress.
Look at that. We don't need all that stuff. But he told them to close the effing door because they were obnoxious people. That's the part that I wanted to show. And okay,
yes.
the Fed, but he did say, Art, and this is where we'll end up our segment. He did say yesterday that the Fed may not be finished with their interest rate hiking and that he is not completely sure that he is going to get to the 2% inflation target. Do you have, I'd like to get both of you with a quick thought on where the Fed is going.
Yeah, well, all he said forever was when you raise interest rates, you slow the economy down, and that controls inflation. We've had the fastest growth with those rates rising to the highest levels. The model is totally wrong, and yet he still sticks with that model nonstop. It's just a total mistake, and I have no confidence in the Fed whatsoever.
Kevin, be that as it may, you think there are more Fed rate hikes in front of us next year, for example?
There are more. Right. There are more rate hikes coming, and the reason is that the Biden big spending is still out there. And so if you spend lots of money and you attack supply, you create inflation. Those fiscal policy forces are still in place. And so Jay Powell has an almost impossible task on his hand because Biden has lit a fire on inflation that's not going away.
Well, as he said, close that effing door. I think that was one of his finest moments. Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Art Laffer. Thank you, Kevin Hassett. Hat tip to Donald Trump for his corporate tax cut.
I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Trial by error. That's the focus of tonight's angle. And they might be asking, why is public trust in the American judicial system declining? Well, it's not simply the BLM propaganda flooding our schools, our universities, that's told young people that disproportionate incarceration of African Americans equals racism. It's not just that. Respect for our justice system is also cratering due to Democrats' crusade, both against Trump and against traditional Americans in general. Now, for the most egregious example, look no further than Trump's civil trial in New York, brought by Trump-hating activist Letitia James. Now, yesterday, Judge Arthur Engoron, who looks like any random legal panelist on MSNBC, blatantly revealed his anti-Trump bias for the world to see because he went so far as to mock Trump's phrase about the perfect phone call, even using air quotes as he said it. Now, a conversation with the president, let me just get this right. A conversation that the president had with Zelensky is somehow fair game for a fraud trial that deals with actions years ago? Look, I saw this and I thought, look, nobody will be surprised by this. This guy's a lefty going back to his days as an anti-Vietnam War protester. We all know what's going on here. No case like this has ever been brought in New York, overvaluing assets, and they're bringing it now only to try to break Trump financially. And we know if Trump never ran for president, they never would have targeted him, never would have happened. That's undeniable. And it's prima facie evidence of the rank political vendetta at work here. Now, the media has made it very clear to any Democrat in the DOJ or the DA's offices around the country that their job is to prosecute Joe Biden's political opponents by any means necessary. They don't want equal application of the law. That's why there are no cries for prosecuting those pro-Hamas nutbags who damaged White House property and historic monuments last weekend. Now, imagine if it had been conservative protesters who tried to scale the White House fence or who splattered paint on the gates. Think of the resources that would have been devoted to arresting every last suspect. Well, we already have a pretty good idea, don't we, of how they handle protests that they don't approve of? They do things like carry out early morning raids on the homes of elderly January 6 suspects who committed no acts of violence.
And 6 o'clock in the morning, I hear boom, 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 boom. FBI, open the door, we'll knock it down. And one was pointing an assault rifle at my head about 4 feet away. It said, please step outside. I stepped outside. They handcuffed me. I said, what is this about? And they said, search warrant. They never produced one. They never showed it.
9 o'clock in the morning, I am on my bed doing my emails, which I usually do. I can hear some ruckus going on in the other room, the area. So I get up, come around the corner, and I hear somebody barking, hands up, FBI. They proceeded to handcuff me, gave me no reasons why, of course, no search warrant. God forbid they present a search warrant.
And they also launched a massive made-for-TV manhunt. This happens almost 2 years after January 6th.
The FBI says they arrested a January 6th defendant after a major police manhunt.
Yeah, that's right. He was a New Jersey National Guard member who was charged with felonies in connection with the January 6th attack. He was there at the Capitol. Gregory Yetman is his name. When the FBI went to arrest him, he fled, and there was a massive manhunt in New Jersey.
How many times can they say massive manhunt? Okay, this week, just to give you a sense of the resources spent, federal, state, and local law enforcement, yeah, huge resources were used in this attempt to arrest this former New Jersey National Guardsman who'd been wanted for allegedly picking up a can of pepper spray and using it against Capitol Police and other protesters. So this guy, Gregory Yetman, is 46 years of age, turned himself in without incident. But the FBI made its point, didn't it? And by the way, this was all done to arrest an individual who the local mayor said was no threat to the community. Which begs the question, why did they need to deploy SWAT teams, police canines, call in the helicopters, roadblocks, all that? Why did they need to do that? Well, many Americans get it, right? They see it for what it is. This is a two-tiered system of justice. Arresting this guy with such a big display of force is a message to all of you. Not worth attending a rally, any kind of rally. Now, was it in any way proportional that the head of the Proud Boys, who wasn't even at the Capitol on January 6th, was handed a sentence of 22 years in federal prison? The prosecutor said that the sentence was meant to deter others who were, quote, unhappy with the results of future elections. Huh. Well, how many fentanyl drug dealers whose pills have killed people get that kind of sentence? Just last month, the dealer linked to the deadly pills sold to actor Michael K. Williams, he got a measly 5 years in federal prison. 5 years for selling a deadly drug that killed a man. So we have gang members, we got drug dealers, rapists, child molesters, murderers, and perhaps even terrorists who've crossed our southern border. And yet the Biden administration, they don't seem to care about that.
There's 280-something people on the terrorist watch list. Are they out of the country or are they in the country?
Senator, they very well may be out of the country.
But you don't know.
But they know where those January 6 people are. They just don't care about the border crossers because that narrative is bad for them politically. Yet not so with the January 6 cases because they're key to Biden's campaign. Thus, the DOJ is still expending massive resources on those cases.
We've seen about 1,200 cases thus far, but 1,000 other people have been identified. And on top of that, you got 1,000 others who are unidentified yet who could face charges. And the statute of limitations expires in early 2026.
Look, as long as the Democrats think that this helps them politically, they're going to keep the charade going when true threats to society run free. This simply makes us trust them less, though, if that's possible at this point. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
All right, welcome back to the stock market. Pretty impressive rally today, up almost 400 points. Heading for a weekly gain, I guess. This is after plunging 20% at one point last year. The Dow this year managed a small gain of 3.5%. Now, look, I love it when we have all these big rallies because it's good for the Kudlow Trust and for roughly 135 million investor class owners of defined contribution and tax-advantaged retirement accounts, along with the old-fashioned defined benefits still used by many of these backward-looking unions. But prosperity, always good. Somebody once said free market capitalism is the best path to prosperity. And so, let's celebrate the astonishing success of the Trump corporate tax cuts, which is virtually the only true stimulus the economy has seen during the very dreary Bidenomics years. Now, of course, Mr. Biden has tried continuously to repeal the Trump tax cuts. He's always railing on about tax cuts for the rich, how they don't work. He prefers big government socialism and the top-heavy government regulations of the Green New Deal. But once again, Biden has been proven wrong, this time by a very interesting panel of experts. A recent study from the prestigious National Bureau of Economic Research, authored by economists from, take a breath, Harvard, Princeton, the University of Chicago, even the U.S. Treasury. Take a deep breath, folks. That crowd sometimes gets it right. Anyway, this study argues that the largest corporate tax deduction in U.S. history was a roaring success. Nearly all those corporate tax cuts are still in place. That's the good news. In short, the key conclusions of this gilt-edged economic panel is that the Trump corporate tax cuts generated more business investment, more growth, more wages for workers, and as lower corporate taxes generated an expanding economy, there was no impact on government revenues. That is the Laffer curve at work. Now, folks should keep in mind that the tax cuts are starting to expire, at least for business expensing. And in early 25, for the individual tax cuts, and all the liberal scorekeepers in Washington are going to tell you that extending the Trump tax cuts will cost $3 trillion or even more. Don't believe them. They're always wrong. And importantly, the heart of Mr. Trump's corporate tax cut, which dropped the marginal rate from 35% to 21%, is actually permanent, unless, of course, the Democrats overturn it through new legislation. Hat tip to Wall Street Journal's James Freeman for flagging this pro-growth supply-side story. Another hat tip to my great pal and Trump colleague Tyler Goodspeed for picking up new revisions to the economic estimates of the Trump years. Actually, the economy beat 3% growth in 2019 and had several quarters of better than 4% growth along the way, and there was no inflation. But all is not well in the world of Bidenomics, because the Federal Reserve, I know it finally got around to tightening the monetary screws. The inflation rate has fallen in recent months. But while yearly inflation has come down, the level of prices has gone up. The CPI, for example, has jumped nearly 18% during Biden's term. Groceries prices up 20%. Energy costs nearly 40%. So again, inflation down, but prices up. That's made life unaffordable for the working class folks. Real wages continue to decline. Couple that with the catastrophe at the southern border, with 8 million illegals flooding into the interior of the U.S., you have sinking real wages along with decade-high interest rates, including, by the way, nearly an 8% mortgage rate. That's why Bidenomics polls in the mid-20s. Why a recent survey by Bankrate YouGov shows that 50% of voters think their financial situation has gotten worse. Only 20% see it improved, 26% unchanged. Meanwhile, today's Michigan Consumer Survey fell again, and inflation fears jumped up again. Fed head Jay Powell told us yesterday, after he shooed a bunch of obnoxious climate protesters out of the room, that the Fed may not be finished raising interest rates because they haven't reached their 2% target. All right. Fortunately, while Israel wipes out the Hamas murderers, the Saudis have kept their powder dry and there has been no oil price explosion. So, how about a big hat tip to former President Trump, keeping business alive with low taxes? And I'm always happy with a little stock market prosperity for all of us, and that is my riff.